Christine Pitsley. I am the project director for Digging into History. This was our second year. First year, Joe there, raise your hand, was a participant when we took these guys to a little village in eastern France called Seicheprey, which was the site of a battle that Connecticut troops fought in. And it was like a really significant Connecticut battle. 81 men lost their lives that morning. And so we got to go over there and dig the trenches where our Connecticut soldiers actually fought. These guys literally walked in the footsteps of the soldiers of Connecticut. Not only that, they all had to research a soldier from their hometown that fought in those trenches. So Joe, do you remember who your soldier was?
Harry Becker.
Harry Becker.
Harry Becker.
So when they did this, they did this research. They talked to the family members that were still around. So when they were actually digging those trenches, they had an idea of what it was like. The first thing we did that morning, the first morning in the trench, we lined them all up. We blew a trench whistle and we said, go over the top, get out of the woods. And they did that. And they all felt fear, even though there was nothing outside of the woods except sunshine. There was still that sense of fear, that sense of they understood what it was like for those soldiers and those boys 100 years ago. So, we couldn't just have the French. The French paid for our entire experience over there. We paid our own way to get over there, but then the French hosted us. And so we couldn't let that go past. We had to bring them to Connecticut. And this is a very rural region of France that, they don't get the opportunity to come to the United States. So this was huge for them. Even though they were coming to Connecticut, and they all just really wanted to go to New York, the opportunity to come to the United States was just, it's not something that that those kids are offered, right? And did they like Connecticut?
Yeah.
So,
As much as anyone did.
I just like it.
COVID kind of got us off track a little bit, and so last summer we were finally able to bring 13 French students and a chaperone over from the Seicheprey region of France, and we had 14 of you guys? No. 12, 16. 16 American students. And these kids worked side by side for 2 weeks. And as you all know, because I think I've seen most of you out at the dig site, we worked with Dr. Sportman and the folks from FOSA to do a once-in-a-lifetime archaeological excavation of this French encampment from Rochambeau's troops. So, it was an amazing experience. I mean, think about it. It's August, and we're in Bolton, it's hot. I got 7 kids here. 7 kids decided it was worth coming to talk about this. To me, you got something. So now I'm going to put them on the hot spot. Oh yeah, and this is Mr. Rapino. He was one of our chaperones. You can tell who they really are. So, I want to hear from each one of you. You had a year to think about what you learned, about the person you became, about how you changed. Give us some sense of what the program did for you and how the program changed you. Who wants to go first?
I'm Madeline. I'm going to be 17 in a couple weeks. I'm a rising senior from Rockville. And for me, the most important thing was surprisingly the language barrier. There are a lot of kids who came from France who didn't know a lot of English. And so we learned to communicate in different ways. And I've brought that back just to kids who can speak English, and learning how to communicate without always just talking it through. And the relationships I built with a lot of the kids throughout the program, even if we didn't stay in touch, it was still a really memorable experience.
I'll kind of piggyback off of what Maddie said. I also feel like introduce yourself. Oh yeah. Hi. I'm Miguel Arena, so I'm Minka for short, and I'm from Manchester, so right next door. Kind of going off what Maddie said. with the communication. I really felt like I built a community with these kids when I was there. Not just the Connecticut students, which it was really nice to see kids from all over around Connecticut. It made me feel more of like a Connecticut citizen. And I was able to make those connections with the French kids. So much so that like even now, even if we don't talk every day, like for my birthday, my 18th birthday, I got a bunch of messages and it was like, happy birthday! And they were all in France and it was so sweet. And also, I feel like it really exposed me to the world of like history and research because during our weeks there, unfortunately, we were rained out of a couple of days. But I remember one day that was really significant to me was we went to the Teapot Museum. It's kind of a last-minute adjustment. We were able to go backstage and see where all the archaeologists and researchers worked. I was able to actually hold like a spearhead of the indigenous Teapots, and it was very fascinating and very inspiring. So it's my take.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm a rising college freshman from Richfield. Jumping off of what Mika said, one of the most significant things for me was getting sort of like a backstage view of all of the different aspects of historical research, because yes, we did the archaeology, but we also got to visit some of the labs at UConn and work on cleaning off artifacts, and we got to visit the Mashantucket Pequot Museum and look at the behind the scenes of artifact classification and storage and analysis, and it really just felt like a well-rounded experience that made me a lot more interested in all aspects of historical research as opposed to just the archaeology, which was what I signed up for.
Alright, I'm Derek. I'm a rising senior at Fitch High School in Groton, Connecticut. So I guess the most meaningful part for me would have had to have been like the language acquisition part of it, because I've been taking French for, I believe, I think this year will be like in the 6th year. So it's been a lot, and the majority of my progress I made following the program as a result of being around these French students, and it was really meaningful for me because I got to communicate with them a lot, whether that would be translating or playing pranks, or I got to translate for a small interview that we did on the West Channel.
Pour moi, c'est une expérience incroyable de venir ici.
It's an incredible experience for her to be here.
Those sort of experiences, it was really nice to sort of get that development of my language skills in French, and I was able to use that this year to get the seal of biliteracy in French this year. So I was very happy with that, and it's definitely been the most meaningful part for me, and has sort of changed how I view language and other cultures. So it's been a great experience.
Hi, my name is Rowan. I just graduated from Bolton High School. Now going to Norwich University. Honestly, I joined the program for two big reasons. One of them was socialization, and the other one was realizing what I wanted to pursue. So with the getting social aspect, I made a lot of long-lasting relationships. Even with one of the girls in France, we're still in contact. We actually are trying to make plans for me to go over and see her soon. So I made a lot of connections that I never thought I would have. I took Spanish for a long time. I was never interested in French, but meeting people from a different culture made me realize how important and how much value other cultures have that I had never realized before, especially when their history intermingles with my own. And I've always been very interested in history. It's always been my best subject, and I never realized how much history was in my own town. And so getting to actually dig into it and learn about where the people of my town came from and what they've done was very important to me. It helped me realize what I did want to pursue. One of my minors is going to be history. Although I prefer art history, archaeology, this helped me realize that all aspects of history, you kind of need to understand the full story.
I'm Bhavni Krishna. I'm a rising senior at South Windsor High School. And I mean, if I was to put my experience in one sentence, I can honestly say that digging into history truly changed my life. And I know that might sound like an exaggeration, but truly, not just in my academics, but as a person, I feel like getting the chance to meet such amazing people from both Connecticut and France, it truly changed the way that I see the world and the way that I see myself as a person. And it also allowed me to realize what my passions are. Being able to do the digs made me realize how much I enjoy doing that type of work. So I ended up joining FOSA afterwards, and I actually did a dig just last week. So it was really fun, and I really enjoyed doing that. And I'm also doing a lot more history research. I just started a research project at CCSU, which has been really exciting. So I don't know, it just made me realize that history is not a boring subject like a lot of people think it is. It's something that is so fascinating, and it's something that we really need to know about to be able to grow as a society and as people. And going back to the as people part, it really helped me as a person realize be more confident. I was very, very shy before the program. I didn't really talk to that many people. But I think it helped me blossom a lot and realize the type of person that I can be and the type of person that I will become. So yeah, I'm grateful to everyone here, and yeah, it was an amazing experience.
I would also like to mention, Bhavni placed first in the State History Day competition.
I'm Joe. I was a student in the 2019 program, and I returned to help out in the last year's program. So, like Bobby said, I was shy before the program. I didn't want to talk to anyone, but this program was just life-changing for me, and I wanted to help. How do I say this? Keep the experience going and keep the program guided. I wanted to help make sure this program went smoothly for these people because I wanted them to experience history firsthand, experience Connecticut history, because when we're thinking of history, we don't think of anything that happened locally. It's all worldwide stuff that happened thousands of miles away, never what happened in your own backyard. So I wanted them to be able to understand what's happened and take a passion in living history and keep it alive. So I returned to the program because I want everyone to be aware of what's in their own backyard, and I want to raise awareness on how life-changing this program was for me and everyone else.
And I'd also like to wish Joe a happy birthday. So, as you guys can see, this is the joy of my life. To be able to watch these kids grow. Bobby's parents came to me at the end of it and said, who is she? She has grown so much. And I've watched it with every single one of you. And all of the kids that couldn't be here tonight. And all of the kids in our 2019 program. And this is the greatest experience of my life. I'm going to let Tom have a say. This was his first chaperoning experience with this group. We had a different set of chaperones when we went to France.
Okay, so I teach history in Wolfville. That's my day job, and I, like Joe was saying, I went to school with Christine years ago. I won't say how many years. It was some years ago. And just a couple of years, 2 or 3. No. And what got me in archaeology was that feeling of being connected to the place that you're in, feeling the place that's not. You don't have to go some other place to see history. History is us. And what moved me about this experience was a couple of things. And on the one hand, it was this feeling that you got of seeing young people get this purchase, or get their hands on literally on history, but also make those connections with the state archaeologist, and make those connections with the folks at the Pequot Museum, and make those connections with the folks at Grants, and all of these different people who are interested in the same thing. It's a networking opportunity that you don't usually get when you're 16 years old. But the other thing was, I've taken kids in my job to South Africa to other countries. And it was really great to see the French kids come here and see them go, look at the soda machine. Oh my God, this would be illegal in France. There's so many kinds of, like, there's a sign that says you can't bring guns to the movie theater. Like, what? Just watching the culture shock from that other point of view was also like a really powerful, impactful experience. So I'm really grateful to Christine, even though it was, you know, a couple weeks of really intense, volunteer work. It was very much a great, wonderful experience. I don't regret it at all.
So before I put them on the hot spot again, do you guys have any questions for them?
It was great to go out and visit when you had the event. But I just was interested, when you actually find something and you dig it up, can you explain that feeling? And it's part of history that you just done.
You had a really cool discovery.
Yeah. So the most interesting thing that I found, it was like a piece of ceramic with like a transfer print on it. I don't know when exactly it was dated. It was like a little after the era we were looking at, but it's just so interesting. Like when you look at it and you see like someone else like hundreds of years ago touched the same thing that I'm touching, like someone used this to eat off of. Like it's so hard to articulate in words because it's just like, it's such like, I think elated was the best way that I could describe it. And even like last week when I was doing my other dig, like that same feeling never goes away whenever you find something, because it's something that you can't get from a history class or a textbook.
I remember we passed around like every find. We were like, look at this tiny, it was like the most minuscule piece of pipe. We were like, look at this, that's insane. And it was just really exciting because you really don't get to really delve into history when you're in a classroom. You can talk about it and that can be fun, but really being there is like a whole different experience.
Finding something is like time compressing. It's like when you're holding an artifact and you're suddenly viscerally aware that someone else hundreds of years before you made this, and suddenly it's like there's no time between then and now. They could have just dropped that like 5 minutes ago and you're picking it up, and it's transcendent almost.
It feels sort of like an anonymous time capsule. Like there's so much history inside the thing you're holding, but you don't know whose it was or where it came from, at least not yet. Or even if it was from the period that we're trying to discover, but it doesn't matter because it's not from today, it's from the past, and it's, like Elizabeth was saying, was going back in time. It's experiencing exactly what they experienced, feeling the same piece of metal or ceramic or pipe in your hand as they did.
Yeah. I feel like when we found that pipe stem, it was just like, it's so weird because when we're in history class and we see photos and in like history books, it feels like it's a different world. Like it's not the same world that we've lived through because it's just so much different and because it's just so separated. But when, like the others were saying, when we find something like that, it really like brings us back. Like I remember finding a bunch of like charcoal pieces. I know some of them were from the nearby railroads, but even then, it's just like the connection. Just you can think about like a campsite and like bonfires and stuff like that to try to keep warm, and then you imagine like it's sort of a connection through history that is very difficult to find. So for me, that was very meaningful for that connection to go.
Unfortunately, I did not find anything from this dig, but in the dig from 2019, I found loads of stuff, bullets, barbed wire, but what really stood out to me specifically was, well, Vincent knows all about it, the bullet spoon. And I don't remember who found it, but somebody found a almost completely intact boot from a soldier. Now, you don't leave your boot in a place like that, so why was it there? You don't leave your boot there, so the guy is probably dead. He probably died with his boot out, and that's all that's left of him. So it's kind of like makes you think like what happened to him and if he made it or not.
Yes.
I have a question. I might have missed, you might have said it and I might have missed it, but where you went in France,
Yes.
what war was that from?
World War One, I'm sorry, yes, World War One. Back in World War One, you joined up with your friends, and most of the Connecticut troops were part of Connecticut's 102nd Infantry Regiment. So entire
So it was Army.
Well, they were National Guard, but then in August of 1917, they were federalized, so they became part of the 26th Yankee Division. And so the 102nd was all Connecticut men. The Battle of Seicheprey was predominantly Company C and D, which were taken from the 1st and Connecticut 2nd regiments. So they were mostly New Haven guys, and Middletown, Bristol, New Haven, Middletown, Bristol, Hartford. I think New Haven lost 16 men that morning. So you were with your friends. You were with the guys that you grew up with. There was one particular father and son, and the father watched his son die, and then buried his son. So it's, that was a very different experience. They really got to walk in the footsteps. They really got to experience history. So we really tried as much as we could to let them have the same experience. They felt the same heat. We were at the site at the same time that Rochambeau's troops came through. So they felt the same heat. They felt the same rain, because it rained when Rochambeau went through. We had briefly talked about marching them up the hill, but there were some safety concerns. We went on the SS Adirondack out of Newport, which was a wooden sailing ship, which kind of gave them the sense of what it was like coming over. What else did we do? We got to celebrate with you guys here for La Fête Nationale, which is Bastille Day, which was, I think, it was a really fun night. It had been a rainy day, and we had our community picnic we had to move it over to the church. And, it was fun. The French were so surprised at what you guys had done for them, the flags on the tables. And, unfortunately, somewhere over there, I have my PowerPoint. Jan, the chaperone, French chaperone, sent me a bunch of the pictures, and there are so many great pictures of this community from his photography, because it meant something really special to me. So now I want to ask you guys, what was the most special moment of the program for you?
For me, I feel like the most special time was probably in Newport, Rhode Island. We had gone there for that ceremony from the Alliance Française in Newport. There we celebrated and we got to go around and look at different parts in Newport. Specifically, I remember going to the arcade with some of you guys and some of the French students. And while we were walking through Newport, of course I'm going to tie it back to French. I remember translating and talking to Luca about just random things like what we were going to do, or just translating back and forth from the Connecticut students to the French students. So yeah, for me that was just the most memorable, most special, single moment.
For mine, it was probably the Pequot Museum, because we've been doing plenty of digging where we found the artifacts themselves, but now we get to see what happens afterwards. And it was amazing to see, because the Pequot Museum is massive. It has all of the room with the little sound audio tour as you walk around, and they have all these life-size setups of natives and indigenous, what it was like. And so it was amazing to see that, because that's the kind of history, even if it's not on that scale, that we're discovering. Each little bit that we find contributes to a word of the information that we start to understand when you're at the museum and you're reading the blurbs of a case, or even when the audio tour is telling you about how the dogs would be their companions. someone had to find the dog bones and put it together, right? So even if we don't know exactly what we're finding while we're in the middle of the field, it's eventually going to be translated into something more meaningful.
So for me, I'm going to sound like a huge sap here, but honestly, it's tied between the first day when all of the American students were like officially meeting each other. Like we had gotten together once before that, but this was like the first time that we were meeting each other. And I swear I have never clicked with a group of people as quickly in my life. It's like, oh, I'm meeting my people. These are people who are like me. And that was incredible. And for a similar reason, the boat ride in Newport, because it was just like the French and the American students were just hanging out and chatting and singing along to Moana together, and it was such a strong sense of community, and that was it was amazing, because even if we couldn't fully communicate, even if we were from different sides of the world, we could still connect over things that you really wouldn't think that we could, and that was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna say two things to it. So one thing that I found really meaningful was when we were doing our digs and we were finding a lot of oddly shaped pieces of quartz. And they said that it was probably from an indigenous person who had been like shaving quartz to make it into something. And that was really fascinating to see the sides of like pipe from the area that we were digging from, and like stuff from the farmhouse a little later than that. So it was like all these layers of history where it's just like one field, but you're finding things from so many different times. And then I have to say, the cooking competition, those are so good. They were so fun, because it was like after a long day, it was 2 days in a row, and one of the days it was us, we went first, which I still hope is such a disadvantage. They did so well, they knocked us out, knocked it out of the park, but we came there after a long day, and we would like make each other like a meal, and we would bond over it and joke about it. And the Americans did a pretty good job. And I love that we did like a mix of family recipes too. Didn't we do like your cookie recipe and then Mary Claire's salad recipe? And we all really like came together to make that. And then the French just like completely over. They did so well. It was unfair, actually.
We got our
It was so fun.
butts handed to us. They said it'd be a full restaurant.
Yes.
With like 5 courses.
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
payback for the year before because we beat them in France. Yeah.
It was very fun.
For me, it was just the honor of coming back to help guide the next program, and watching all of them do the same work that I did, and comparing my experience from theirs. When I was in France doing our dig, we were just using full-size shovels, digging and throwing it like over our heads, stuff. Just the actual archaeologists here would have a heart attack seeing what we were doing. It was nowhere near as meticulous as this was, and because we went through every inch of dirt, every little balled up piece of dirt we had to break up and see if there was anything in it, because if you can miss anything there, no matter how small, there might be something in your little ball of dirt that's like an inch wide. So watching them do the same work that we did, and frankly doing better at it, because they were able to communicate much better with the French students than we were in my group. So they had a lot more students that spoke French, and a lot more of the French spoke English. American. So, yeah, that's that.
I'm also gonna go with 2 of them. So the first one is when we went to Yukon and we went through a bunch of different artifacts that we had found and that they had, and we would like scrub them with toothbrushes to get the details out of it. That personally was my favorite part of like finding anything or looking at anything, was getting into like the nitty gritty of what it actually was, and then having like professionals come and look at it and tell you like, oh, what is this mark? What is this? And then also when you would float stuff so that way you could like look at the dirt and everything and go through it. It was just, you don't realize how important the small things are until you actually like have your hands in it and you're like, I never would have thought of this. My other thing was a little bit more personal and also general. I really loved like late night or early morning like talking to each other. Like sometimes we would text each other and be like, get up and meet here, and we would just like hang out and talk like in the lounge. Or like Bobby was one of my roommates, and we would like sit on the beds across from each other and just talk about anything that came to mind, like our favorite things, what we thought about other people. It was just so much fun like getting to know each other like on that personal level, and also only in a 2-week span. You don't think you can get as close to people like in that amount of time, but the like insane bond that you can build when you have that kind of resource and you're living so close together, it's just amazing.
Mine's gonna be actually pretty similar to Rowan's, which was a lot of the times like before we went anywhere, like I remember vividly before we went to a New Britain Bees game, I think. Yeah. So right before that, I went into a room with like the French girls' hotel room or dorm room, because it was like separated at the beginning. Like we mixed at the end, but at the beginning there was a room with just the French girls. So I went to the room and then we all did like our makeup together, and we were all like listening to Justin Bieber. I hope the other rooms didn't hear. We were all like blasting Justin Bieber, and like I don't know, it was just like I don't have any siblings, so I've never really had an experience like that, being so close with like people my age. And I don't know, it was just like I have like a lot of like selfies and just like random like mirror pictures. Like I'm a teenage girl, I just do that stuff. So it was just really nice having those like, I guess, normal connections with people that I never would have gotten the chance to meet otherwise. And it was also cute just seeing like how dressed up they got for like a baseball game, because like for us that's such a normal thing. But they were all like wearing their little cute skirts, and it was like it was so adorable. So yeah, that was my favorite part.
I would also like to add, one day before we went to go see Moana, we played touch football, and that is when you do not know, you don't have to know their language and they don't have to know yours. You just have to be competitive, and it was muddy, and not everyone was very like athletic. But it didn't matter because we were all just having a good time playing together, and Jan kind of stole everyone's thunder. He was pretty good.
We lost in American football.
Yeah, we lost it. But it's okay because I feel like that was a huge bonding experience for all of us.
The one thing I will say about after that game, which I was really proud of you guys, there was a national anthem battle. The French stood in a line and started singing their national anthem. So these guys lined up opposite them and started singing our national anthem. And they're screaming, trying to sing over each other.
Good for you.
So everyone, we were at the drive-in. This was the football field right next to the drive-in. So everybody that was over at Southington Drive-In could hear this national anthem battle going on. Yes, I was so proud of them. I have the video for them. It's great. Yeah. So as you can tell, we could keep talking and talking, but I do need to give Sarah a chance.
For my office, the Connecticut Office of State Archaeology, this is also a really significant opportunity. One, because we're always looking for ways to bring archaeology and history to the public, particularly to students and younger people, just to kind of, help to instill that, just that value of our our shared cultural heritage here in Connecticut. And in this case, we had the wonderful opportunity to work on a site that showcases our shared cultural heritage with the French, right? It's an important Revolutionary War era site here for us in Connecticut, but it's also a site that ties to our long alliance and our long friendship between the two countries, so that's really exciting too. And so, while I know there were challenges in the field with the rain and the students didn't get to do as much excavation as we all hoped, the project was actually, archaeologically speaking, really successful in a lot of ways. We did a lot of background research and preparation for the students' arrival. We did a metal detector survey and some ground penetrating radar to help kind of hone in on a spot in the field where we thought there might be a good opportunity to do an excavation. And although it didn't work out the way we hoped because it was so wet, we actually ended up making kind of what I think is a pretty significant discovery. So we found a number of artifacts related to the encampment. And you know, we talked about earlier, they talked about these kind of tangible connections to the past and how these little bits and pieces of history can really tell a story. And some of the things we found, that if you just look at them, they're just kind of, you know, boring objects. A couple of examples here. So that she, you know, I've got a musket ball, right? We have several musket balls that we found at the site. They're all intact, they're round, they're made of lead, right? These are dropped musket balls. If you were on a site of conflict, you would expect to find musket balls that have been impacted because they hit targets or hit the ground, they're all flattened out, that kind of thing. The neat thing about these is several of the ones that we found have these little holes in them. And that's from, they were loaded into a weapon, and then they were removed with a gun worm. That's how you unload it. You had to twist the kind of corkscrew thing in and pull the ball out. And so in this kind of context, right, where you have a campsite, they had people on guard every night. And you had to have your weapon loaded when you were on guard, and you had to have it unloaded when you were off guard. So probably what we're imagining, right, from this story is people, these men are on guard, right, they're guarding the camp in the night. When their turn is over, they unload their weapons, but it's dark and they fumble and they drop their musket ball and come along and find it 250 years later, right? We found a number of regimental buttons reflecting all of the French regiments that we know were here at Camp 5. And, you know, that was really cool because if you think about it, there's this march they're making. They're running 15 to 16 miles every day in the summer in these wool uniforms with all these buttons and all this equipment. They've got bags, they're carrying things, they're pulling things. Imagine when you finally get there and you're unloading, just imagine wearing something with all these buttons and you're like, heave your bag off your shoulder and they pop off, right? I mean, that's what we're finding. I mean, we found more than a dozen buttons from their uniforms, right? And these are all things that belong to individuals. The other thing that I think is really neat that we found that's not, you would never look twice at this, it's just sort of like a lumpy piece of metal. But these are all little pieces of molten lead. We found many of them in the field, and they are basically the remains of soldiers sitting around making bullets, making musket balls in the evenings around the campfire. They're melting lead, pouring it into molds, and this is basically the stuff that dribbles out in the ground and hardens, and we find it. So all of these little bits and pieces tell part of the story. And unfortunately, sorry, I really appreciate it. So, and the other thing is that the spot that we chose, we did the ground penetrating radar and we did the magnetometry as well as the archaeological and metal detecting. And we did find an area where all of those different survey methods kind of pointed us in one direction. And when we actually looked at the data, which I can't show you right now, because the picture would be really small and it wouldn't make any sense, we found basically in the area where you guys dug, there was a large circular feature. And it looked like kind of the remnants of a circular trench. And if you remember in the field, you found some charcoal, and we thought maybe some areas of burning. And actually, the dimensions fit really well with the earth ovens that soldiers were using in the field. So these were like, you know, quick, fast things that they would dig and make, even just for quick encampments like this to cook their food. It was a really efficient way to feed a lot of people really quickly. And while, you know, we don't have that smoking gun evidence because we weren't able to expose the whole thing and get a nice plan, the ground penetrating radar and the magnetometry data, as well as the artifact concentrations, they really line up beautifully for that. And I think that's probably what we had here. So I think that's really exciting and a really important part of this project. That's important because in the past, they've done archaeology here in the 1990s on this site, and it is considered the most intact of the Rochambeau sites because it's undeveloped. But there was fear that the agricultural practices that happened between the 1990s and now had caused some severe erosion and maybe gotten rid of the chance for archaeological features and things of that nature. But I think we demonstrated that that's not the case, and the site retains incredible integrity. So even though it didn't work out the way we all kind of hoped, it still was an archaeological success. So for that, I appreciate all your hard work and all your slogging through the blood.
It was an archaeology program that was supposed to just be pretty much digging, but they got to experience the entire spectrum of archaeology, from helping set up the trenches in the morning, the first morning, to seeing what happens to everything once it hits the museum.
You had to do some metal detecting and ground penetrating radar too, so you had a pretty good mix of activities.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we drive two French kids to the Indiana Jones movie, for which we probably open our apology.
Yeah. When I realized how many Barbie pictures, I was going through the pictures for the slideshow I did, and there was a big Barbie box that you could get inside and take a selfie in, a picture in at the theater, and I've got like 25 different photos of these guys at Barbie boxes. I should have let them go see Barbie. I'm sorry, guys. We were just trying to keep with the archaeological theme.
There's probably about as much archaeology in the Barbie movie as
Probably.
I have this memory of the metal detecting, like carrying around the metal detector, and then the little one that was like handheld that you did to like pull in, and just like walking through the farm. And there was one part of the farm that like the grass was really tall, but we had done like a lot near the dig, metal detecting, and that was where the grass was like, walkable. But we really wanted to find something, specifically a button. We were all like, we really want to find a button. I really want to find a button. It was like the whole time. And I like went to those grass, and I think I forget who I was with, but I remember like plowing into the thick grass. And like every time there was like movement, we were like, what is that? But we raked it for a button, and that was really fun.
Yeah, I really like the metal detecting, so for Christmas, my parents got me a metal detector.
Oh, I do.
So now I walk around my backyard and I find a lot of bolts and nails and screws. So yeah.
Good fun. Any other closing thoughts?
So honestly, I sort of got into archaeology thinking that it was going to be sort of like Lara Croft Tomb Raider, and this was so much more fun than that. I have never been so excited that something was not at all like an action movie portrayed it.
Well, thank you guys for hosting us tonight.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
coming.
And hopefully, the state librarian has decided to end digging into history. So as of right now, you guys are the last group. Hopefully that'll change someday. But thank you, Golden, for hosting us, and thank you guys for being so amazing. I'm gonna cry. Thank you for being so amazing and enriching my life in a way that I never ever thought it could be enriched, because you guys are just. I could not have done this without Sarah, and we had a long road before Bolton.
We did, yeah.
And we're glad we ended up here in Bolton instead of that other place, because you guys were so much better.